Hi again, this is Mark, and I'm here to talk about how to give online video presentations. I've introduced a number of videos where we've talked about good presentation techniques, right? How to master public speaking. But one thing that's increasingly a challenge in our digital age is how to give a good presentation online, how to give a video presentation. Keep in mind that a lot of what I'm talking about, I think, also is pretty good as far as online meeting etiquette. So things that would go over very well in a video presentation are also pretty good advice when you're trying to engage with someone during a virtual meeting. I'll tell you up front, there's certain things that I'm not going to talk about, or at least not as much in detail, because those things are covered in some other videos. For example, how to organize your presentation. That's not really the subject we're going to talk about here. There's another video on that. Nonverbal communication, verbal communication, those are things that I think you can go into a lot more depth with some other videos that I have available. But right now, I just want to focus on those things that are specific to an online presentation that mostly you would experience here and maybe not speaking live in front of an audience. So let's talk about it. So I hope that this video is going to be very useful for you. I know there are a lot of people who struggle with online presentations, and if you do find it useful, please like, subscribe, share, or if you want to learn more about various subjects here at the University of St. Mary, we have some great professors and great programs. I lead the MBA program if that's something you're interested in, but come on over, and education's a good thing and we're a great place to learn. Okay, so here's some advice on giving good online presentations. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the background. Okay, so if you have a look at this one, this is my real desk, and this is what it really looks like in the background. It's a natural setting. Now, I've been told that this kind of a background is a good thing. I've been called by a lot of media organizations to ask my opinion about various things where I'm, an expert opinion on certain things, and the people who are the producers of the show have given me suggestions on what my background should look like, and so these are the kinds of things that they recommend. One thing that they don't recommend is a stark blank screen. That is, I'm just in front of a plain wall, and for some reason, just the absence of anything in the background seems a little bit unnatural. Now, I think stylistically, it's really cool. Like if I wanted to do a cool introduction to a video, I think it looks really striking. I think it looks great. Wouldn't rule it out necessarily, but usually that more natural looking background is something that people are accustomed to. It just seems a little bit more natural. Blurring your background is also sometimes acceptable if it's possible, given the sort of software that you have, especially if there's something that's really distracting in the background, something you don't want to draw attention to. So that's sometimes a good plan. Likewise, I'm sure you're familiar with the kinds of backgrounds that you can sometimes put behind you. I will say that if you're giving a professional media presentation, you just want to have a good background, not necessarily a blurred or something a picture that you impose in the background like you would maybe in a Zoom call or something like that. And I would say really for any kind of professional presentation where you have to do a video, those really aren't your first choices. May be okay in a meeting, not really necessarily as okay if you're giving a professional presentation. So the next thing I want to talk about is framing. And this may be an obvious thing, but I've been in enough meetings and seen enough presentations to know that maybe it isn't as obvious as I think. What do I mean by framing? I mean that you should actually be in the middle of the frame, right? So if you look at my image right here within this box, I'm just about in the middle of the frame. And in fact, what's nice about this background, I'll adjust it just a little bit, is that I can actually make myself look even more centered because I have, two fairly symmetrical things on either side of me and a fairly symmetrical setup in the back. So, I look even more centered than maybe I would under normal circumstances. Maybe it's too much, not really necessary, but what's important is that you are in the center of the frame. Now, likewise, the thing I think that a lot of people struggle with more than anything is where to put their head, how far up. Now you can see there's about this much distance between my head and the frame like this. I'm sure you've seen some bad video calls where people are talking to you like this, and for some reason they can't figure out how to aim the camera properly. So this obviously is something that you don't want to do. You also don't want to cut yourself way too low and lose your head entirely here. Now, especially if it's like this, because the eyes are important. Like, I can get away with maybe a frame shot that's something like this, that especially if I want to get closer to the camera, maybe there's a message that I want to deliver where I think a close proximity to the camera is better. This is not a bad framing if that's the purpose of what I'm trying to do, trying to create a more intimate moment, right? But, you know, something like this, that would just be, you know, that's too much, right? But still, I would argue, at least for a professional presentation, for the most part, trying to find that spot where you're right in the center. People can see you very well. So here are some other things that I think are really important. One is eye contact, okay? Now, if you're in front of a live audience, obviously you want to make good eye contact. And when you're not, one of the challenges of doing a video presentation is that oftentimes there's not somebody who's really there. And so you have to imagine somebody's there, and you have to figure, okay, so where are their eyes? So as much as possible, I want to look at that camera. Now, sometimes, see, I have a tendency, like I'm actually looking at a video of myself. My tendency sometimes is to look at myself talking. My eyes may be a little bit low. I probably should raise them up just a little bit, but this isn't horrible, right? Point is, try to make eye contact. Imagine somebody's there and trying to make eye contact with them is a really effective way to make this work. Next is posture, right? First of all, you have a jacket on, like I do. Sit on the back of the jacket so it doesn't bunch up on you. And keep your shoulders square, right? Try to sit up straight. And again, just one of the ideas is that you have to act like you care, you're there. If you don't act like you care, then it shows sometimes in your visible posture. So if I'm tired, if I don't really feel like doing it, see, you can see physically how I feel based on where my body is. And so sitting up straight, that means that I'm attentive, I'm engaged, I'm trying to engage you. So that's really important as well. Another thing I want to talk about is hand gestures. Now, you see that I use hand gestures sometimes, and I use it naturally, I use it for emphasis, just as if I were presenting in front of a live audience. And so that's pretty important. I will say, when you're listening, like if you're in a video meeting situation, if your hands are out of sight, and especially if your eyes are not engaged and you're looking off over here in this direction, people tend to believe perhaps that you're not really listening, you're not tuning in, maybe you're looking at your phone or you're typing on your computer or something. So being aware of that as one aspect of video communication is important to remember too. There's another video that I have on verbal communication, and I'm not going to talk a lot about that because I really want to refer to that video to help you out more. But I do think that there are things that are sort of unique to video presentations that are worth emphasizing here, for example. First of all, I will say that a lot of times when you're doing a professional presentation and it's over video, it may be a combination. It may not just be a video like this, but it may be something where it's this plus a PowerPoint, where you're sharing a screen. And I would argue, first of all, it's important, just as in live performances, not to read your PowerPoint, okay? Your presentation should be you talking, not you reading. I mean, yeah, I know it's horrible, like if you're in public and you're turning your back to the audience and just reading off the screen, which I've seen before. It's not quite as bad in a presentation here online because, as long as you're looking at the camera, your face is the camera, it's not quite as bad. But when I'm watching a presentation, I can tell when somebody's just reading as opposed to when somebody is actually explaining. And the reason why that's important is that a lot of times you can lose your audience when you're reading. When you're explaining, it seems more spontaneous, it seems more natural, it seems like you're more vested in it. And it also seems like you're more of an expert, right? You're just saying this stuff, you're not reading it. And that way people tend to trust you and your expertise much more. Now I want to talk about appearance. I know I've mentioned appearance in other videos as well, but I just want to emphasize that when you're giving a video presentation, it may seem like a more casual thing, maybe you're doing it at home, but whoever you're talking to, especially if it's a professional situation, they may not be at home. They may be in the office. And when it's coming down to maybe you're persuading somebody to do something with money, appearance kind of matters. They need to know that you care, and your appearance is one way to communicate that you care. So I would refer you maybe to other videos as far as the details about, how to look good, how to look professional, and so on. But for now, let me just emphasize that this isn't something you probably want to do in a sweatshirt or something that's overly casual, right? You should probably look good. You should look neat. Your appearance should be nice. It should be professional. Now, that may change depending on who your audience is, right? What your industry is. If you're trying to give a presentation in front of a bunch of software engineers, it may be different than the way that you look when you're presenting in front of some bankers. But do that research, think about that a little bit, and treat it like it's a live presentation. What would be appropriate to wear in front of certain groups of people? And how are you going to deliver that? Finally, I want to address some things that are unique challenges really to giving online or video presentations. One of them is that audiences have a short attention span. As far as I can tell, you may not even be watching me at a normal speed, right? You may be like pushing the little speed up button and watching me talk really fast. Now, one way to try to combat that is by trying to maintain a consistent speed. If you speak too slowly and too monotone, then people are going to get bored. So you kind of have to keep that pace up. So that's one way to fight short attention span. The other thing is that you're struggling with people who may be distracted by other stuff. You're watching a video. I know you guys are going to be jumping around on this video and looking for key things, right? I do the same thing as well because I sometimes have that short attention span. I don't think that's something that's really unique to this particular time. I just think that with so many other distractions, the possibility of, looking at a sports score or looking at social media or doing something else, you may be just on to the next thing that's more interesting, right? Well, that is the challenge that you have to fight when you're a presenter. So thinking about what are those challenges and how do I get past that, right? You have to think about that. Otherwise, people are just going to sort of click through and go on to the next thing. I would argue that the best suggestion that I can give you as far as trying to get past all of that is to be enthusiastic and show passion for your subject. This is one thing that I see that's a problem in live presentations or video presentations as well. Usually it's people who are just sort of going through the motions, reading their presentations, just, acting like they don't really care all that much. And if you act like you don't care, then your audience isn't going to care either. And so just like I'm trying to give as much enthusiasm and show you how important I think this is through my voice and through my body language, it's important that you do the same when you're giving your presentation too. So just to sum things up, if you're a professional and you're looking for a good way to give presentations, I hope that some of the tips that I've given you are things that are helpful for you. For those of you who are my students, I'd look through this thing pretty closely because if you want to know how I'm going to grade a presentation, these are things that I think are particularly important. And so the bottom line is they're not just things that are valuable in a classroom, they're things that are important in a professional situation because let's face it, we've all seen good and bad presentations and you know what those are and you know what those are like. And it's the same whether it's in academics or in a professional setting. And so we don't want you to suck, right? We want you to be good. And so I would say follow this advice. It may not be 100% perfect, and even if you can't get it all down or if you've got your own style, okay, fine, fair enough. But hopefully this is enough to allow you to carry a few things that are away that will be helpful to you in the future. So good luck on your presentations, and I will see you next time.